Hey, it's Soul with another video, and I got nothing. I have no notes. I don't really have anything to refer to, but just a couple minutes ago, I had finished watching a video from Asmongold that talked about, quote, I believe this is quote, the state of battle for Azeroth, as you know, at least from his perspective. When I was listening to the whole thing, it was kind of like greatest hits of MMO Champion and the WoW forums and certain areas of Twitter that go into pretty much every negative slant of a critique that you can get to with regards to this expansion and the direction that World of Warcraft has been going in over the past several expansions. Anyway. And you know, at first I thought it was like, okay, this is like just kind of a greatest hits thing, and then it went to like this borderline satire because of his suggestion that, hey, you know, we should have like a big suggestion, you know, a big forum just for suggestions and good ideas, and it's something that's going to be very heavily curated by Blizzard in such a way that only the cool ideas will get through. And from those, hopefully, those cool ideas will be translated into something that is actionable, that Blizzard will act on, and we'll be able to see in-game at some point in time, whenever it's reasonably possible. And I think my head was like just kind of twisting back and forth. I'm like, oh my god, really? He wants this, blah blah blah. He thinks that. The tone of the video was so hyperbolic and negative and all that it's so easy for me to just be like, dude, I totally disagree with every point. However, I don't. Everything that he says is true. The exception is the way the exception is in fact the tone and the way it comes off, and the I guess what went on there that kind of bothered me was that there wasn't a lot of acknowledgement or any acknowledgement of how other players feel. It's his opinion, and it's coming from it's coming from him. That's cool. The parts that threw me off where he was like, oh well, I'm basing my opinion on what I see on other forums and Twitter and such, so that influences that opinion. So I guess what I'm here to do today is kind of carry on for a little bit, hopefully not for half an hour, but I wanted to carry on about my perspective on this, how I see this, and while I do identify these kinds of issues that he has as well, I see it differently, and I don't see it to be as bad as one would think. He claims he says and he claims that he doesn't represent players. I don't think I do the same either, but I think that he does come from the perspective of the players that are part of the forums and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and whatnot, who offer these critiques. And I feel like I have no idea, I probably don't, but I feel like I represent those who just don't talk. Those who just speak with their wallets, or who just hang out in game and kind of do their own thing and just go and do their day by day, and don't really look at the news, the forums. They don't watch these videos or any videos. One of the big arguments that's been being thrown around ever since Legion or so is the idea of, well, the design decisions that Blizzard is making is all about increasing playtime and getting people to stay subscribed for as long as possible. Increase those monthly active users, and that's all that matters. And in my opinion, it's a valid critique, but it refuses to acknowledge how things were before, and how this is just a redressed version of what feels like almost the same thing. There is a big difference. But the way that I see that particular argument, to me it doesn't hold any water at all. The idea of using these convoluted systems just for the sake of prolonging subscription time or enticing players to log back in and do stuff, to me that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because I would think to myself, the immediate response that I have to seeing something like that is to suggest, well, if Blizzard really wanted to increase sub time and online time and whatnot, then they would do something much more subtle, like such as not bother with the idea of being able to switch specs and have your primary stats change with that. They would have remove that. They would have said, oh, it's not fun somehow, so we're going to take that out. Or they would have lowered the drop rate on certain gear. They would have lowered the number of pieces of gear that dropped in a raid. It would have gone back to like vanilla levels where 40 people would go into a raid and only two or so pieces of gear would drop per boss kill. Kind of sucks. They would go back to having ridiculous Black Temple level attunements in order to just get into a raid. And the whole premise of prolonging subscription time is countered by an argument that is stated by other players. You know, maybe a different segment that says, well, all you have to do is do LFR and you're done with the game, and then you feel like you don't have anything to do when you ask, oh, where's the content, Blizz? So I'm not saying that any of these opinions are wrong, but that these opinions and that the players themselves, they have all sorts of different opinions, many of which contradict with each other. And from that, the whole premise of creating a forum that's just designed to curate good ideas, that ain't gonna work. I mean, it's very idealist. I appreciate the sentiment and the passion behind wanting something like that. But I ain't gonna work, dude. You'll easily have conflicting ideas that have very strong and good points that come from all these different camps, all of which will probably contradict with each other, and I don't think anything great is going to come out of it. I mean, it's a great thing for Blizzard to look at and be like, okay, they got some good ideas there. Okay, that's a good idea here. Okay, well, whatever. Let's go with what we were doing, okay? There's also the conversation that went on, and this also happened in Asmongold's video too, about the premise of, oh, we're just playing in a Skinner box. We're just chasing rewards and carrots, and we're fed up, and some other analogy like that. You know, I'm pretty sure I'm just playing a video game. And that the whole premise of a video game is, I mean, this is another cynical way to look at this thing. It's, well, I'm just playing ones and zeros. I'm just looking at pixels and that sort of thing. So for me to try and understand a game system so much that I have to break it down into the psychological level, like, it's, oh, this is just a series of dopamine rushes and such. That, to me, that is an active effort to take the fun out of things and turn it into a calculation, which is a stance that I take with regards to things like simming and all that. To me, simming takes a little bit of the fun out of the game. Although that's a very debatable stance that I'm taking, because there are many folks that love to break things down and be able to go take that path of being able to maximize or min-max their performance. Now, there is one aspect that I think Asmongold and I are more closely aligned with, and that's the idea of being able to work towards something, setting a goal and targeting something that we can eventually work towards. I think he missed the point of, I think he missed the part about, hey, there's the weekly conquest gear award, the weekly PvP award that you can work towards. You know exactly what it is, you can go for it. But at the same time, there is a random factor whenever you complete higher end arenas or rated stuff in order to get decent gear. I've said this story a number of times. It's about the Red Sword of Courage. It's a sword that drops off of King Yimran in Utgard Pinnacle back in the Wrath of the Lich King days. And I think I killed that dude maybe like 50 some odd times before I can get this sword. I really, really wanted it, and so I got it, and I felt pretty proud of myself when I finally did, or at least I felt very relieved after like the 50 some odd run. These days, maybe because I'm getting old and kind of cynical myself, but I just forget the name of gear these days. It doesn't matter. It's like I look at the source, I want it, I see it, it looks really cool, but I wouldn't consider the story behind obtaining it to be very memorable. And the reason why is because there's so much feasible, reasonably good gear that's out there that it makes that final goal of getting that thing that you actually want, it doesn't make it feel nearly as fulfilling. This is a trade-off where the perspective on it's where Asmongold and I diverge again. He sees it as a slot machine. I see it as just incremental rewards. That's it. Nothing special. Once upon a time in the Burning Crusade days, there were so few pieces or so few sources of gear that I would often go weeks, months without getting anything worthwhile, not even like a side grade or just nothing incrementally good, because I already got the piece of hero badge gear or whatever that was at the time, and nothing else would drop for me because I wasn't really capable of raiding beyond a certain level. It's the difference where in the past you got nothing, cool, you get something good. These days it's you get decent, okay, decent, downgrade, nah, decent. You know, you get a different kind of reward scheme going on. I wouldn't exactly call this a slot machine, because if I were to say that current BFA and Legion as well, that their progression system is a slot machine, then I could easily use the same thing as before, except that you won nothing instead. The question that's being posed here for you folks at home and on the toilet who are experiencing this kind of system is simply, what do you prefer? Do you prefer a very heavily curated and rep gated or time gated system where Blizzard will eventually distribute like nice pieces of gear for you? Or would you prefer a system where you are showered with gear and eventually among those things you'll get something good? Maybe I'm losing my mind, but I see these two systems as pretty much the exact same thing. Only with this current system, there's a lot more colors to work with. So cool, it works with my transmog. And by the way, yes, people do care how they look like. I hope I kept this short. I don't mean this to be like this anti-Asmongold, I disagree with you sort of thing, because he's saying a lot of the same things that I'm saying. It's just that the conclusions that we come to are very different. But where do you stand in all of this? For those of you who did watch that Asmongold video and talked and saw stuff about this suggestion forum, do you really believe that the most talkative of WoW should be dictating the game over those who don't talk, or even the developers who are actually making the game? Have the Legion and BFA systems turned this game into a slot machine, or is this just a redressed version of what we've been experiencing this entire time? And lastly, Nomi sucks. Am I right? Right? That's all I got for today. So share your thoughts and stay breezy.